Can you hear me? Why can't I hear you? What's the
Maybe his microphone in the computer is shut down, the speakers by itself. It's on mute.
So. Danny, can you talk?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're talking right now, Rabbi. Can you hear us? No, it's the speakers on his computer. That's what it is. All right, it is what it is.
Ask to unmute. Oh, 1 second. Ask to unmute.
Rabbi, test.
No. 1 second. Don't give up so quick. Can someone talk over here?
Yeah,
Must
I'm
be my
talking right
speaker.
now.
The no, I can see. I can't hear.
So it's fine, Rabbi. We'll just do it.
Oh, Avramo. Okay, good. I'll give another second to Avramo. Avramo, I can't see you, but if you want, you can start. Maybe you can start the Zoom and I can go into your Zoom.
Do you hear?
It's my computer. Next to your mute button. There is an arrow. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. I see that. No, I see that button. See my speakers. So I have two options for speakers. Right now I'm on one option.
And you can't hear us right now?
Another option. These are my two options.
How about now? Can you hear us?
Same as system. I'm on same on system. Can you guys hear me? Okay, let's go, guys. Let's push it late.
You can't hear us though?
He can't hear anything. It's fine.
All right, with the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Mem Aleph. We are going to be learning a whole daf regarding the way the Korban Pesach has to be prepared. And as the Torah says, a pasuk in Parshas Boy, that al toichlu mimenu na, don't eat from it, partially roasted. Uvashel bevushel b'mayim, nor cooked in water, ki im tzli eish, you have to roast it in one unit, roishoy al kira'ah al kirboy. So we're going to be learning about whether you can cook Korban Pesach in May Pedis. This is something that we already had in the Mishnah, Daf Mem Amud Beis. We're going to be learning about what we call a pot roast. A pot roast means that you put the meat, you put the Korban Pesach, you don't put it over fire, you don't roast it over fire, you put it in a pot. Elamah, you don't add any liquid in the pot. Now, when you put a piece of meat in a pot, so its fats will become, so to say, liquidy, and it's going to be cooking in its own fats. We're going to learn over here, there's a machlokes, whether that's a problem or that's still considered halachic roasting. We're going to have a question of machlokes tanoim, whether something that was first baked is then cooked. So if you're going to roast the Korban Pesach and then cook it, will it change its status? And thus will you not be allowed to eat it? Or once it's cooked, once it's roasted, the whatever you do afterwards won't change its status of it being tzli eish. We're going to learn about whether a person will be chayv malchus for eating raw Korban Pesach. The Torah doesn't specify not to eat it raw. Na means partially roasted, but it is included in what we call a lav shebachlolos. There is a generalized prohibition, as we'll speak in today's daf, and there's a machlokes whether you chayiv malchus for lav shebachlolos or whether you're not chayiv malchus for a lav shebachlolos. We're going to learn another detail regarding the Korban Pesach, and that is that you have to be not only counted in a group before you shech the Korban Pesach, but you can only eat your part of the Korban Pesach in one location. You can't eat it in two different locations. And we're going to have a Gevaldika application of that halacha. And finally, at the end of the daf, we're going to have a amazing interpretation of the Tanach Rabbi Yehuda as to what is the meaning of the word lemor. The pshat of lemor, the Torah is filled with lemor. It's by Veidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Lemor means to repeat to others. Azoy tzuzagin. But we're going to learn a drush in the meaning of lemor. We left off. We're going to start on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. We are 9 lines from the top of the Amud by the 2 dots. Ein mevashlin. So the Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that you may not cook Pesach, the Korban Pesach, not with mashkin, right? Not with the seven liquids, the 7 halachic liquids, which is yayin, dam, shemen, cholav, kal, and dam and mayim or dvash. So that's the yat shach dam. But the Mishnah says not in those 7, nor was mepedes. So it begins the Gemara Tana Rabbanan. We are quoting the pasuk in Parshas Boy when the Torah says that do not ubashel mevushel b'mayim. So b'mayim, the Torah specifies not cooking it with water. Ainli elo mayim shar mashkin minayin, that you also may not cook the korban pesach in it. So Amrat, the Rabbi responds that you may not. What's the kal v'chomer? Uma mayim she'ein mafigen tamon. They don't impart flavor in the meat. And nevertheless, the Torah says that it's asurin. So shar mashkin, shemafigen taimon, other liquids, they impart flavor. Avad lekolchen, that you're not allowed to cook it in shar mashkin. So the Tanach holds that we learned this from a kal v'chomer. Rabbi says, b'mayim, ein li'elamayim, shar mashkin minayin, that it's asur. Rabbi is not arguing with the din, but he has another source. So Talmud Lamed, uvashel mevushal. That's a double expression. The Torah could have says that ubashal, don't cook it b'mayim. What's the mevushal, the extra word? That's mikol makoim. No matter how you cook it, you got yourself a problem. Asks the Gemara, my benayu. Again, sometimes the Gemara answers that mashma is dorshani kebenayu. No, here there's an actual nafkamina. Says the Gemara, ike benayu. The difference between the Tanach and the Rebbe is tzalik kedar. If you make the korban pesach as a pot roast, in other words, you put the meat in a pot, you add no liquids, but the fats dissolve and it cooks in its own fats. So according to the Tanach, the whole issue, right? It's okay. Why will it be okay? Because he speaks about other items adding flavor. So mayim doesn't add flavor, but the Torah says you can't cook it in mayim. The Tanach says all other liquids that they add, it's flavored by an external source. Avada, it's asur. If the meat is being cooked in its own fats, then there's no external flavoring being added. So you don't have a kal v'chomer. Now, water doesn't add any external tam, but the Torah says not to cook it in water. So it's water, and then anything that adds external flavor. Cooking it in a pot will be allowed according to the Tanach. But according to Rabbi, that bashal mavushal mikol makoim, it's cooking in its own fats. And any type of cooking in cooking is going to be asur. Gaval. Says the Gemara, okay, the Rabbanan don't need mavushal. They have a kal v'chomer. So the Rabbanan high bashal mavushal my avdilei, says the Gemara, mi bayalei lechedetanya. It says in a brayso that bishloi. If someone first cooked the korban pesach and then they roasted it, or shetzaloi, first they roasted it and then they cooked it. In both cases, says the brayso, the person who will then eat it will be chayiv min chayiv malchus. Now it says the word bishloi v'achakach tzaloi. First you cooked it, okay, we get your chayiv. The habashlei, the Torah says don't cook it, you cooked it. But if first you roasted it and then you cooked it, what's the problem? Hatzali eshu. So why are you liable for eating it? Amai. So Amarav Kahana Hamani Rabbi Yoisihi, the Tanya. Here we're speaking about the obligation of eating matzah. What happens if you take a wafer of matzah and you soak it in water, right? Now, we're not speaking about soaking it to the point where it gets dissolved. It doesn't get dissolved, but it's soaked. So we learned in a brayso that yoitzin b'rekik hasharoi u b'mevushal shaloi nimoyach, that if you soak a matzah, or if you're even going to cook a matzah, as long as it doesn't completely dissolve, you can be yoitz in the mitzvah of eating a matzah. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yosi says that yoitz in the kikashari, soaking a wafer, soaking a matzah is okay. But you can't cook it. Even if it was not nimoyach. It was baked. It doesn't matter. Rabbi Yosi holds that matzah has to be a baked product. And even if you're going to later cook it, it's going to change its classification. This is going to be a mevushal dika matzah. No, matzah has to be something that was made in an oven. So Rabbi Yosi, who holds that even after something was finished in one location in an oven, if then you cook it, you change its status. So that will be the Tana that holds that you can't cook the korban pesach, even though first you did sli eish to it. Ula Amar. That afilu temer of Meir, that holds that a matzah is allowed to be cooked, but shani hachi, Pesach is different. Why is the Korban Pesach different? Because the Torah says the extra word of bashal mavushal. Mikol makoim. So that's the answer. What will the Chachamim do with the bashal mavushal? They're going to learn from it that even after you properly roasted it, then you're cooking it, it's not good anymore. Even though for a matzah, it doesn't change its status, the matzah will be kosher. The Korban Pesach will not be kosher. You might think that if you mamish roasted it, kol tzarchi means you went beyond kol tzarchi, you burnt it. And then you're going to eat it, you're going to be chayiv. Talmud Leimer, no. You know what God does not allow you to do? Al toichel memenu no. Don't eat it when it's partially roasted. Don't eat it if it's bashal mavushal b'mayim. So no, bashal mavushal amarti lach that you may not eat it. But the loy, shetzaloi kol tzarkai, that is not something that's prohibited. Hey chidami, what does it mean to mamish roast it? Kol tzarkai. Again, kol tzarkai means a beyond. Amar Rav Ashi, that even if the shavi or charoicha, even if you render it mamish like a charcoal, doesn't matter. It's not no. It's overly roasted. It's not bashal mavushal. You're going to be yoytze the mitzvah of eating Koren Pesach. We learned in the Bryce. Yachol, you would think that achol kezai is chai. If you have the meat raw, completely raw, you'll be chayiv. No, Talmud Leimer al toichel memenu. No, no does not mean raw. No means partially roasted. Don't eat it bashal mavushal. So here again, no u bashal omarti loch that you may not eat it. V'loi chai. Chai is not included in the lav. Yachol hey muter. No. Muter it's not. Talmud Leimer, the Torah does say ki im tzliesh. Now, ki im tzliesh, this is very important, is not only a positive commandment. The pasuk begins al toichel mimenu. The al toichel mimenu, not bashal mavushal, yes, sliesh. So we teach that anything that's not sliesh is included in the prohibition of al toichlu mimenu. But since it's a very generalized statement, the na is a specific lav. Don't eat it partially roasted. Don't eat it cooked. That's a specific lav. The opening of the pasuk, al toichlu mimenu, if it's not sliesh, is taka a lav, but it's called a lav shebachlolos. It's called a generalized prohibition. And we hold that you're not chayiv malkis for violating a generalized prohibition. So raw is taka asur, bilav without malchus. No, partially cooked, that you're going to get malchus for. Now, exactly, there has to be a cutoff point where it's no longer raw and it's now considered partially cooked. Where is that? So, hey, chidami, no, when is it partially roasted? Amarav, kida amri parsoi, abarnim, and you have to understand the lashon of the Persians. In other words, abarnim is, when it comes to Hilchas Shabbos, what did we have? We had Kamaichel ben Drusoi. Doesn't work that way over here. You have to know what abarnim is. If it's not roasted, where the Persians will call this abarnim meat, that's called raw. When it's abarnim, that's the no. No is partially roasted, is what they will call abarnim. Amazing. You see from the Gemara that without using this word, there's no other way to explain it. Now, the bottom line will be the same, is that we may not eat it until it's properly roasted. The question is, are you going to be chayiv malchus? If it's completely raw, you're not chayiv malchus, according to this Tanach, who holds that you're not loiker for lav shebechlolos. Once it hits a barnim level, that's where you're going to be chayiv malchus. Another interesting din. Amar Rab Chizda, hamavashel b'chamei Tveria. Guys, we learned this in Hilchos Shabbos. So you're going to be potter. Now, you should not cook anything in Chamei Tveria midrabanan. But as we learned, that what is the biblical prohibition of bishul? Anything that is coming from a fire heat source. And that's not Chamei Tveria. Pesach, however, Pesach should be shlei b'Chamei Tveria. And the Torah says if you eat Pesach, that was bashal mavushal, b'mayim, you're going to be, that's a lav, then you're going to be chayiv malchus. And the Gemara wants to know why. Frek the Gemara, Maishla b'Shabbos, the loy, that you're not chayiv malchus for cooking in Chamei Tveria, because the toldas eish be'in and the leka. It's not toldas eish, right? It's not a fire heat source. So, why should it be different? Pesach nami, Chamei Tveria is not toldas eish. So why are you going to be chayiv malchus? By the way, just for you to know, how can you cook Korban Pesach and Chamei Tveria? How did it get there? Korban Pesach is kachei kalim. You can't take the Korban Pesach to Tveria. So this is really a theoretical question over here. L'choira. Doesn't matter. We want to know if you were to cook it in Chami Tiveria, aside of it being a psul yoitze, if that, and the Braisa is saying that's not the biblical prohibition. So Amar Rava, that my chayiv diktani take, it's not called cook. Chayiv means you're violating the tzliyesh. Oh, gewaldig. And Rashi says, the first line of Rashi under the Gemara, Lav de loisoichal ki im sliesh ika. Like we mentioned, the pasuk begins with the words al toichlu mimenu. Then the Torah gives two examples. Don't eat it, no. Don't eat it, bashal mavushal ki im sliesh. Which means that if it's not sliesh, then you're not allowed to eat it. From al toichlu mimenu. Rava holds that you are chayiv malchus al lav shebechlolus. Gewaldig. Rab Chizda holds that you are chayiv malchus for lav shebechlolus. So when Rab Chizda says that if you cooked it b'chami teveri, you're chayiv malchus, where does it say that you can't cook it in chayiv? It's not called bishul, I know, but it was not slieshed. And anything that's not slieshed, now you say cooking in chami teveri, according to Rab Chizda, if you're having it raw, no, you're going to be chayiv malchus. Zeir good. Rab Chia bereid Rab Nosson masni lo. That Amar Rab Chizda hamavashul b'chami teveri b'Shabbos pater. However, uPesach shebishla b'chami teveri, you'll be chayiv. And he says, not because it's bashul mavushul. It's not called cooking, because you are oived on the lav of tzliesh. Don't eat it, only tzliesh, and not anything else. It's a very general statement, but again, Rab Chizda holds that if you violate the general law, you're going to be chayiv malchus. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, that acholei no, if you ate a Koren Pesach the way God said specifically not to eat it, partially roasted, daf mem aleph on the base, you're going to be chayiv two malchus in. Wow. Why are you chayiv two malchus in? Because you ate it no, and you didn't eat it sliesh. You know, he also holds, Rava holds like Rab Chizda that you're loika alav shebechlolus, even when you also did something that the Torah specifically said not to do. Look inside the top Rashi. Mishum loitechlu mimenu no, and mishum loitechlu ki im tzliesh, because the chi im tzliesh nami alav de loisoichlu koi, like we learned on Amud Aleph, and you're chayiv malchus, and therefore you're going to be chayiv twice malchus. Similarly, in top line in the Gemara, if you ate the Koren Pesach cooked, you're going to be like a shtaim, the same shtaim. The Torah says, don't bashal mavushal et b'mayim. You did that, you ate it, you're chayiv malchus. The Torah says, al toichlu ki im tzliesh, nachamal malchus. And therefore, if you ate a kezayis na and another kezayis mavushal, both na and mavushal, then you'll be chayiv 3 times malchus. Here, you're not going to be chayiv 4 times malchus, because you're going to be chayiv once malchus, interestingly, for the lav shebechlolus. You'll be chayiv once for that, and then for the no, another one, and then for mavushal, another one. However, Abaye disagrees with that, and he holds that ain't like an alav shebechlolus. A generalized prohibition is taka asur midoiraisa. You're not going to be chayiv malchus. So therefore, if you have it no, you chayiv malchus once. If you have it mavushal, you chayiv malchus once. If you have no and mavushal, you chayiv malchus twice. Here's the question. Ikada Amri, some people hold bishitas Abaye that tartahu deloy lucky. But what's going to happen according to Abaye? Not if you have it no. What happens if you have it raw? What happens if you have it cooked in chami teveria? Maybe Abaye is going to hold that if what you did is not any specific lav, but it's included in the lav shebechlolus, then you'll get malchus once. If you have it no, Abaye says you're not going to be chayiv malchus twice, because the Torah says al toichlu mimenu no. You can't use the al toichlu 2 times. But if you're not having it no, you're not having it cooked b'mayim, you're having it cooked in chami teveria, which is not bishul. There at least you'll be chayiv now for one lav shebechlolus. No, that Abaye will hold that you're never like a lav shebechlolus. Not only if you also violated the specific. If you never violated any specific lav, you were not allowed to do it, but there's not going to be malchus. And why is that? The source that we get malchus in the Torah is from a pasuk in Parshas Kiseitze. After the Torah says, Arboim yakenu, right afterwards, the Torah says, that a person should not thresh when his animal is muzzled. That's a specific what you should not do. So if something is not similar to the lav of chasima, you're not going to be chayiv malchus. Torah says don't muzzle your animal when you thresh. That's a specific action that you cannot do. When it comes to eat it sli'esh, not whatever is not spoken, that's too general. With taka, it includes raw, and it includes chamei teveria, and it can include anything that's not sli'esh. You're not chayiv malchus at all. Similarly, says the Gemara, the same type of question. First, the machlokes between Rav and Abaya, whether you're loik and lav shebechlolos. And then, even though Abaya says you're not loik and lav shebechlolos, the inquiry as to how far does Abaya say it. So we have that machlokes here by a Koren Pesach, and mamish the same machlokes when it comes to the parsha of a nazir, as we learn in parshas Nasai. The Torah says that mikoil asher ye'aseh migefen, that a nazir may not eat anything that is a product from a vine. And then the Torah gives specifics. Machartzanim, Rashi writes in Chumash, it means the seeds. Va'adzog, or the peel, lo yoichel. What about any product from the vine other than the peel, other than the seeds? Can a nazir eat it? No, because the Torah says that lo yoichel. Mikoil asher ye'aseh migefen hayayin. But that's a general statement. So the same thing. So says Rabbi, if a nazir ate just a zog, he ate the peel of a grape. He's like a shtayim. Shtayim. Hold on, the Torah. Where's the shtayim? Yeah, one, the Torah says mechartzanim va'ad zog lo yoichel, and then the fact that the Torah says mikoil asher ye'aseh migefen hayayin lo yoichel. That's a lav shebechlolos. You're like it for both. Likewise, if a nazir ate a chartz and a seed, he's like a shtayim. If a nazir ate a zog and a chartz, he's like a shalosh. Comes along Abai and he says, no, ain't like an alav shebechlolos. So if you have a zog, you're chayiv malchus. If you have a chartzen, you're chayiv malchus. If you have a zog and a chartzen, you're chayiv malchus twice, for zog and for chartzen, but not for any other part of the vine. And here the question is, ikada amri, that Abaya kartahu deloy lucky, because you are at least getting malchus once. You ate the zog. So since you violated the specific, then you don't get also for the klolos. But if you ate a part of the vine that's not the zog nor the chartzen, then maybe Abaya will be moided that you'll get malchus for that. And and why is that? Because the loymiyachad lave kilav the chasim. It's not like the lav of chasima. The lav of not threshing, muzzled is a specific. Thou shall not, and anything that is too generalized is taka prohibited, but you're not going to get the penalty of the arboim yakenu, which is, as we know, which is 39 malchus. Says the Gemara weiter. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Brais that ochal, back to Koren Pesach, ochal kezayis no. If you had the kezayis that is partially roasted, but you didn't eat it when you have to eat the Koren Pesach, you ate it mi ba'oid yoim. You ate it on the 14th. Says the Braisa, you're patur, because the isur of eating it no, or bashal mavushal, or anything, or raw chai, or chamei teveria, all of that is only at night, not on the 14th. Kizayis no mishachashecha, then you're chayiv. Now we're learning another din, that the Koren Pesach may not be eaten roasted during the day. Ochal kizayis tzli mi ba'oid yoim. You ate it at a time that you should not have eaten it. So at least you didn't ruin something for you. What's the ruining over here? When it comes to eating a Koren Pesach, we're going to learn later in the Masechta, the dinim of you have to be counted in a group. When you shech the Koren Pesach, there's noiser. We have to not finish it by midnight. So a person cannot eat all that meat. So it's not only that after I shecht it, let me invite Chevre to help me finish my Koren Pesach. It's much more than that. When you shecht the Koren Pesach prior to the shechita, you have to designate a person to an animal. You have to be counted in that animal. Not only do you have to be part of the minuya of those who are counted to eat that Koren Pesach, but you have to eat it with your group, and you may not eat it in two places. That means that if you ate a kazayas not with your group, you can't eat a kazayas with them. Once you ate it, you ate it. However, says the Braisa, since the obligation of eating it is at night, if you ate a kazayas roasted, but you ate it by day, then we don't say you no longer, that's it, you messed it up. You didn't eat it with your b'nei chabura. If you ate it in the zman that you're not mechoyev to eat it, loy pasal atzal b'nei chabura. However, says the Braisa, if you ate a kazayis sodi mishach hashecha and you did not eat it with your group, then yes, pasal atzmi b'bnei chabura, then you no longer can eat it in the proper place, which is with your group, because you may not eat a Koren Pesach in two places. We're going to learn many of this dinner later in the Masech. Okay, in other words, the eating that counts, even in the negative, is only at night. Tanya idach. We learned in another Braisa. Why would you think that you're chayiv if you eat it bisman that you don't even have an obligation to eat it? So the Braisa says v'dinu. I'll tell you why you should be chayiv. Because uma b'shah sheyeshna b'kum achol tzli. That if during the time where you are obligated to eat the Koren Pesach roasted, which is at night, then God says don't eat it. No. So when you're not even obligated to eat it correctly, in other words, during the day, then for sure don't eat it not correctly. Okay. Or the Braisa says no, maybe not. Now there's two steps how far we will push the not. Step number one, maybe when you are not able to fulfill your mitzvah, which is during the day, maybe then that is when God says you can't fulfill the mitzvah properly, don't fulfill it not properly. But maybe at night, when you have to eat it properly roasted, maybe there's no love. Interestingly, in other words, there's a logic here in the Braisa to say that during the day there is a love, and don't eat it no, and at night there's no longer a love. And don't wonder, see, Danny made a face at least, how if it's usher even prior to the Zman Achila, how that Isser should fall away. So the Braisa says, don't wonder, don't make a face. But out the Tama, that's something that's prohibited, the prohibition would be lifted. We're not saying that you're yoitze to eat it. No, we're just saying that the isur is lifted, because I'll show you even though if you ate it sli, we just learned the Braisa, you didn't ruin it for yourself. You have to eat it in one place. That's okay. You ate it sli by day. That doesn't count. But you're not allowed to eat sli mi ba'od yoyim. You're not allowed to eat the Koren Pesach roasted mi ba'od yoyim. So, nevertheless, you are obligated to eat it sli at night. So you see, when it comes to the Koren Pesach being prepared properly, there is an isur to eat it roasted by day, and that prohibition falls to the side at night. So maybe the isur of eating it no is only by day, and it falls to the side at night. Says the Braisa, don't say that, but I need a pasuk for that. Talmud Leimed, al toichel memenu no. Don't eat it no. Don't eat it. Bashal mavushal b'mayim. Yes, how do you eat it? Ki im tzliyesh. Now, what you have to look inside the Chumash over there and boy, before this pasuk telling us how you should not prepare it, which also concludes with the words ki im tzliyesh, one pasuk prior in the Chumash, the Torah says, v'achlu es habasar balayla hazet tzliyesh. The Torah said in one pasuk prior that you have to eat it tzliyesh. So if God wants to tell you in this verse, don't eat it no, fine. Don't eat it bashal mavushal, fine. But when the pasuk concludes, mamish repeating something that we know again, when it says in this verse, K'im tzliyesh, says the Braisa she'ein tamad lomi K'im tzliyesh. God already said in the last pasuk that v'achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh tzliyesh. That's to tell you this extra nachamol. Eat it roasted. Only during this man of eating it the way you should, which is roasted. Only then. Then if you eat it no, you get malchus. Then if you eat it cooked, you get malchus. But which is during the day, not only are you not obligated to eat it, but you're not allowed to eat it during the day. So during that time, if there's no obligation of eating it tzliyesh, then there is no lav of eating it no. Rabbi Omer, Ekrani bashel. The Torah could have written only the words bashel. Ma tamud leimer mevushal. Torah uses a double lashon. Shiyachol einli ella shebishla mishach hashecha. I might have thought that when are you violating eating the Koren Pesach? When it is cooked. Only if you cooked it at night and then you ate it at night. But what's going to happen if you cooked it by day, even though you only ate it at night? But if maybe you would think that if you cooked it by day and you eat it at night, you're not going to be chayiv malkis. So that's why the Torah uses a double lashon. Talmud loimed, I don't care when you cooked it. Bashal levushal is something that the Torah says, don't do it. Bashal levushal. Mikal mokim. Says the Gemara, hold on, you forgot. We learned today on Amud Aleph. Bashal levushal. Rabbi says that we already used that. Not like the chachamim that say that you can pot roast it because you're not adding external flavors. No, Rabbi holds that the bashal levushal tells you that you can't cook it in its own fats. So he already used the bashal levushal. By bashal levushal, afke Rabbi litzli kedar. And also what he directly used it for, that was the ikebenayu, that you can't cook it. The Torah says bashal levushal b'mayim. The Mishnah says you can't cook a Koren Pesach, not in the other of the 7 liquids, not in Meipedes. All of that is learned from the bashal levushal. So how can Rabbi learn yet another limud? So the Gemara says he can learn both. You know why? Because in Cain, le'mekra, the Torah taka needed to repeat it, to tell you can't cook it in shar mashkin, to tell you that you can't even cook it in tzli kedar. But the Torah could have said bashal or mevushal. The fact that the Torah changes its lashon, my bashal mevushal, shma min otarte. This is so great because the people who say that lashitas, that you say that dibra Torah kolashon b'nei adam, and that b'chlal, there are many things that are repeated in the Torah. B'nei adam don't say bashal b'mayim. No one says that. That's mamash extra. Bashal mevushal is takakid, is dibra Torah kolashon b'nei adam. What we're learning beautiful here in Pesachim is that from the double expression, Rabbi learns the limud that you can't cook it in anything. But he holds that the Torah taka could have written bashal or mevushal. Bashal mevushal, which makes it sound like a poetic, is more problematic. Why are you changing your lashon? So you learn yet another limit. It's something that's problematic, from which we learn that even if you cooked in nibo yoim, you may not eat it at night under the penalty of malchus. That if you eat a Koren Pesach roasted by day, as we just learned above, it's not only that you did not fulfill the mitzvah, it doesn't ruin this obligation of eating the Koren Pesach only in one location. You could eat it at night, but eating it at day roasted, you're chayiv. Wow. Ukizayis no, mishachashecha yivaiki you're chayiv. Says the Gemara, l'chu'ura ketanitzli dum yadana, which is l'chayra man no bilav, aftzli bilav. This Bryce is saying, chayiv, you're violating a lav. Now, strike the Gemara. Bishloim and no, that says clearly, al toichel mimenu no. But where do you have in the Torah that you cannot eat tzli by day? Where is that? Avol tzli minolan. Because says the Gemara, I'll tell you where it says. Now it says, I know we know how to eat it. It says it in the positive. The Torah says that v'ochlu es habasar balayla hazeh. We just quoted that pasuk tzli. So if the Torah is saying that eat the meat tzli balayla. So balayla in by yoim loy. Fine. So I get from here that you may not eat it during the day. But the Braisa juxtaposes it with the Isur of Achilas no. No, you're violating a lav. Where is the lav? This is a general rule. That even when God is implying that which you may not do, by telling you what you should do, we can make that implication. You may not do it otherwise, but you're not going to be chayiv malchus. Because if it's coming from a mechlal asay, the rule is l'chayre b'cholav ba mechlal asay is an asay. So how can this Braisa tell you that if you eat tzli eish bayoin yechayiv malchus, where is the lav? Answers the Gemara. Omar Rab Chizda, ha mani daf membeis Rabbi Yehuda. Guys, fasten your seatbelts. If you never heard this before, after you were born, here we go. Or we're going to chazer this moedik Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rabbi Yehuda is referring to a Braisa. And Rabbi Yehuda is in the Braisa referring to a pasuk in Emor regarding shiur vaseh, either one or the other. If it is sarua is when one limb is larger than the other, that's a blemish. Or if an animal is kalut, if the hooves, it's a kosher animal, but this animal's hooves are unsplit, that's called a mum. And therefore you can't demagdish it for it to go on the mizbeach, But the Torah writes, "Nadava tasa oisoi." You can donate it for the Bedek Habayis, donate it for the temple treasury. Then they can sell it and use with the money whatever the Bedek Habayis uses its money for. Oh, tasa oisoi says the Beraisa. Oisoi atan maspis lebedek habayis. An animal that is not wholesome, a blemished animal, can be donated to the bedek habayis. Ve'iyata matvis tamimim lebedek habayis. An animal that could have been sanctified bikedushas haguf by saying this animal is for my oila, for my shlamim. That you should never give to the bedek habayis. And mikan omru, that if someone did that, kol hamasmis tamimim lebedek habayis oiver ba'asei. Right? Because Tasa Oisoi says the Beraisa Vaited. Ainli Alabase. How do you know if someone was Magdish, a animal that's Tamim, for the Bedek Habayis, he's Taka Oiver on a lav? B'loisa Seminayin. So listen to these words. Talmud Leimer, at the beginning over there in Parshas Emor, like most Parshas in the Torah, it says, Vaidabar Hashem el Moshe Leimer. Now, the shot of Leimer is that there are things that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu just between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu. Lamer means that you should repeat it to others. Azoy zu sagen, to give over. So now we're going to learn a drush. Limeid al kol a parsha kula. Whenever a parsha begins with the words lamer means sheyehei beloisase. Anything that you infer from a positive has the koyach of a lav. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, coming back over here in Parshas Boy has the words lamer and yech ben moida v'ochlu asabasar balayla hazeh tzliesh. Eat it balayla hazeh tzliesh implies, but don't eat it erev Pesach tzliesh. Don't do that, even though it's not going to ruin it for you. But don't do it. You're going to be chayiv malchus because lamer means a lav. Amalei Levi, Amalei Rebbe to Bar Kapara. Okay, Makabel, but how do you see a lav in the word lamer? So Amalei, the chsiv lamer, listen to lamer. Lamer is a composite of loy, comma, nemar bedvarim. A loy mit an aleph, a no is said regarding this parsha. God is saying what I'm saying here is not only implied from an asay. Whatever is implied may not be done. Beirav, Amri, that the word lamer means lav emoid. A lav is said. How amazing is that? Guys, my numechutanim, look at lamer. You have Levi, Aaron, and Rachel Miriam. Hastal lamer. Arangezort over here. So Bekitzer, according to the Braisa, follows Rabbi Yehuda, that holds that, Kiyim Tzli'esh means that you are Chayiv Malchus for eating a Koren Pesach that's roasted during the day, God willing to be continued. Guys, I apologize for the sound. Chabal.
Still not.
I'll fix this today. It's terrible. It's terrible. For the worst is for Danny. Guys, Danny is platzing. But you can type. I'm sorry.
What's the problem?
Who's Shlomo Harwitzing? What was that the lamer there?
You don't hear us?
Gut, Chevra, a guten Tag. I apologize.